Welcome to Third Fridays, the monthly legal talk show from Lois LLC featuring attorney Christian Cintron. This is the original forum in which real attorneys discuss workers' compensation issues, share their opinions, and engage in colorful conversations. This show showcases diverse perspectives of attorneys handling workers' comp cases, including case law trends, practical litigation strategies, and hot topics. Here's your host, Christian Cintron.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the new edition of the Third Fridays podcast. I actually just forgot the month. It's April 2023. Just gave myself a little bit of time to, trigger myself in the morning. I have a really cool episode for you guys today. So I'm going to welcome two guests, two attorneys from my office, Tomer Lehr and Alexa Cintron. Welcome to the show, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. All right. That was like the exact same things that you said during the test run. So maybe it's like in your head.
It's built in there.
Yeah. So you guys actually know each other. You have a pre-Lois relationship. Not that you were involved. Like the relationship has like this weird connotation, but like you guys know each other before coming to work here, right?
That's correct. So Tomer and I were both law clerks in Passaic County Superior Court. We were in the family division. Tomer came to Lois directly from that job. I did something else for a little bit, and Tomer always kept typing up the firm. And then when I was looking for a new place, here I am.
Yeah, I think I remember messaging our group text probably 6 months into my job here, just trying to pull in some new people. But she was fixed at that point, I think.
I probably have that message because it was in a group.
Yeah.
Group.
Now you're here, so.
Like you were at that first intro, like you felt like, oh, I'm good where I am. Like I don't need to.
Yeah, it was a different area of law. It's the kind of law I wanted to do in law school. But then, so it was fine at that point, but then wasn't really into it anymore and needed something new. Right.
And, joining the rest of us here, I don't think there's a single attorney out of the 45 to 50 that we currently have that was like, I'm going to be a workers' compensation attorney, right?
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
And so when Tomer reaches out to you and you're like, well, I'm in the industry that I planned for, like to move industries, you're not thinking about
I was kind of honestly like,
what are you talking about, dude?
I was shrugging off. I was like, no, I don't want to
workers' comp?
Yeah, I was like, what? Why would I do that? And also didn't know anything about it. Never really, in law school, no one ever talks about workers' comp law. So I was like, nah, I don't know if I want to learn a new area, but it was honestly kind of not a seamless way in, but you learn day by day that it's a good area to be in.
Yeah, and I guess what we're going to talk about today, it's almost like it's not overshadowing how much impact you have on the firm, Alexa, but really one of the best contributions ever is this book that we're going to talk about today, right? It's called 3,000 Questions About Me. It's very shockingly part of our day, right?
Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be as much part of our day as I think it is now, but the questions are great.
It's a good little break from the day, take a step back from the work and start to, I guess, get to know each other through this book. So I think it's been pretty nice, and we, like Alexa's been saying, we've been, I think, using that book quite often.
Yeah, people come to me, run to my office now, can we do a question?
Yeah.
I'm like, let's do a question.
So as our listeners are hearing this right now, they're like, still, what is this book, right? So 3,000 Questions About Me is literally 3,000 questions. Mm-hmm. And it's supposed to be this icebreaker style, pamphlet that you just ask a question and everybody gives, some information about, how they feel about a certain thing. And it kind of brings us closer together. It's like you said, Tomer, it's like a break in the day. And I started thinking about it because there are a lot of questions here that do apply to what we do in our work life, right? And I thought it'd be kind of fun to just do a podcast to show our listeners how you guys have evolved as attorneys and really demonstrate that we are a firm that not only works really hard, gets good results, but we like each other. Right. It's kind of fun, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Learned a lot, but just by these simple questions, I know some things about my coworkers that probably would have never come up in normal conversation.
Okay, so almost like a game show, right? We've done it in different facets, like I have, or some other person has just rifled through the book and picked a random question, or someone else has just picked a number from 1 to 3,000 and we ask that question. Which one do you guys think we should do? Or maybe we should do both, but what do you want to do first?
Start with a question. All right, let's start with a number, I think.
A number.
Yeah, pick a number.
Yeah.
All right. What number?
1,763.
1,763.
It's a good one.
Right.
This is not,
This
you know,
was
rehearsed or
not
anything.
this was not a
do not
pre-picked
actually know
number,
what
I
the question is
promise.
here.
Right,
so.
no, and I appreciate the conversation fillers that you guys are putting in right now as I try to find 1,763.
Sorry, I could have chosen 7.
No, it's fine. Oh, this is interesting.
Oh no.
Perfect.
What is the worst book you've ever read?
Worst book ever read.
The worst book I've ever read in real like.
Well, I'll go first,
Yeah.
right? I think like there are a lot of materials that are out to help people learn a topic, right? Train and get yourself. I mean, Alexa and Tomer, you guys came to us with no workers' compensation experience, and now you're just killing it every day, right? And I do think there are a lot of materials kind of available for someone to learn, right? And so the way that I learned was actually this Horn book from Weiss and Balter, the workers' compensation law. I definitely have a copy in this office somewhere. And it's not the worst book, but it was written by 2 claimants attorneys at the time, and everything was geared towards like being a claimant's attorney. And so I would read it and it'd be like pro tip, and it would say all these things about how to to really navigate the system or to use cases. And I always thought, like, there should be a defense Horn book. And now we have one, right? Like, we do this every year. We update it with new case law. We've now branched out into risk transfer, construction practice. I'm thinking to myself, I need a book.
Right.
But worst book in law school or personal lives? What do you guys think? Like, what are the elements of a bad book?
I think so. I read in law school. I was in a negotiations class. It was like it was more like a simulation class. You'd actually go out and do negotiations, and the book for the class was like obviously like a bullet point of like, this is how you negotiate. This is how you become a good negotiator. And
As if there's one way.
Yeah, and I just wasn't buying it because looking at what the book was telling me, like in practice, like it was so. In law school, I was in these simulated negotiation classes, but I also was in a mediation clinic, and I would go out in civil claims court and do mediations, and like the book was not helping me for the real life simulations. It just you couldn't follow a formula to be able to negotiate.
Sure.
You could get the skills, and I understood that part of it, but like just the way this book was like telling you like, if you do this, there's no way you will not succeed, and then going out and like being like a naive law student and like going out and doing a real mediation and then not succeeding, I was like, what am I reading? So luckily, like, I kept taking classes like that throughout law school, and like there were better books out there that were kind of more like a theory of it rather than like do this. So yeah, this one book from my negotiation class really.
Books are also becoming less mandatory, right? I think they're there as like helpful tools, but I mean, like you're talking about negotiation. I mean, take mock trial, right? Like, you didn't read a book to place as high as you did last year, right? And with our program starting this year's program starting in a few weeks, I'm not going to give you a book, and you're going to be doing some live negotiation for this fake fact pattern. And I think you have to build your practical experience with some of the tips. I mean, we do have a lot of internal materials that we provide our attorneys and paralegals to train on, but at the same time, it's the execution of those standards that really start to build the foundation of how to do things.
Right. Yeah, I was just thinking about that too. I also took a negotiations class back in law school, and I was involved in some divorce mediation. Of course, when we were law clerks, we also were doing consent conferences, and there's sort of pseudo mediation type situations. But like you said, I mean, there's so much you can get from reading. I think the sort of tangible practice of negotiating, mediating, and just real life experience that you get just from doing things really, changes your arsenal when it comes to these sort of things. And I think that it's applicable in, not only what we were doing back then as, law clerks, but the way you perceive yourself in court, the way you discuss things with pro se's and opposing counsel, that sort of real life interaction that really hone in on those skills. I think that's what really makes it, a lot better than those boring, simple books that we were reading back in law school.
Because honestly, no book, especially when we were doing in the courts, no book teaches you how to talk to a pro se.
Yeah.
So that you really need to you need your experience, but just like how you've learned over the years to really because you have to give them credit. Like, they don't know the law like we do. They don't know really procedural steps. So getting that, like you said, tangible experience and learning how to talk to different groups of people, that is better to me in terms of learning how to negotiate, do mediations than reading just a textbook.
Yeah, okay. So I think maybe the worst book is a book that tells you this is the way to do it, right? Mm-hmm. Because think about how many things we've all learned just from conversations with other attorneys and paralegals in the office. Yeah. It's those things that not only bring us together and more make us become more tight knit, but also have more lasting power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you think that when you're reading one of these sort of books that tells you a particular style, a particular negotiating style or litigation style, that you're almost pigeonholing yourself into becoming that sort of type, or is it more so a means to mold your character and your persona, I guess?
I think that's a great question, because I think when people talk about skills in the written word, you have to be a really great writer for the reader to visualize that happening, other than just reading, right? And people will listen to this podcast and they'll come tell me, oh, what you said about this made a lot of sense, or can you talk about this in the next month's episode? And it's because that form of learning seems to have more of a unique way to mold people. Whereas if you were to see okay, this worked out, right? You read an article, how much staying power does that really have, right? How many news articles or articles of any sort that you read on your phone you remember in a week or two, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the things that you hear have some type of different mechanism. Now, maybe, I'm sure there are people that definitely learn more from reading than listening.
Right.
But I'm not one of them.
Neither am I. I need to have it, I need to hear it. I need it spelled out in a certain way, and I
even need the visuals too.
Yeah, and I need.
So you guys will see me always on the whiteboard.
The whiteboard is the most helpful thing. When I was when you were helping me prep for one of my first hearings, I remember you pulled in the whiteboard and you spelled everything out for me, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes so much more sense than me just reading what I'm supposed to be learning.
Right, at the risk of being called a professor all the time, right?
Right.
Sometimes it's worth it.
Yeah, just hint to the attorney listeners out there. If you like learning with a whiteboard, come give me a call.
There it is.
All right.
There it is.
Good first question. Alexa, do you want to go with a number, or do you just want to rifle through the book?
I'll give you I'll do 350.
350?
Yeah.
All right, 350. A little bit easier to find. Okay. I'm not sure how we're going to turn this into workers' compensation, but I want to give it a shot.
Okay.
Okay? What nickname have you been called that you detest?
Wow.
In this office?
Well, it's got
in
you have
part of my job?
Yeah, I think just, if it obviously is politically correct, and
Just gotta keep those things in mind.
right. That's obviously key.
You do have one.
Tomer calls me. Tomer and our other friend Julia, who's a paralegal at this firm, call me Nerd Alexa.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And
yeah.
I think it's stuck pretty well.
It's stuck pretty well, and I honestly don't take it offensive. Well, that I detest. I don't detest it, but
right.
I don't take offense to it. But it started because I'm newer. I'm still learning like day to day of like what the big world of workers' comp defense. So I don't know, sometimes I'm kind of like holed away, like really concentrating on something, and they're like,
don't apologize for working hard.
no, I'm working. And that's how it started as a playful way, because there were some times that I wouldn't leave the office.
I think nerd has a negative connotation, but it was definitely.
I don't even take it that way.
I wear it with. I'm proud of it.
Right.
I just want to make that clear. It was more so like as Alexa stated, she's I guess a bit newer, and I think more early on in her time here at Lois, you'd see her bring home the laptop. And getting some late hours in.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there is, but
I don't want you to do that.
No,
you
of course
don't have to.
But no, I was saying in the more of like in the sense of when I just started, like I came here with absolutely not an ounce of workers' comp experience. I was practicing in New Jersey. I never did New York. I never did any like New York practice. So I was nervous starting. I was like, all right, this is new. They're giving me a chance with no experience. Like I wanted to learn. And then as I kept going, like day by day, like once you're more comfortable, like I realized like, oh, this is kind of fun. Like I do like what I'm doing. Like I want to learn more for it, like for this job. So I think that's where maybe like a little nerd connotation comes in. But like,
yeah, I mean, how many meetings do I
happy.
start where I'm saying like, sorry guys, I'm a little bit of a nerd about this. Like I think of nerd very positively for some reason.
Yeah, I'll rip it.
I agree.
I'm here.
I think it more so shows dedication and hardworking mentality. So when I would never rip on one of my coworkers in a outwardly negative way. So obviously when I'm saying
it's all in good fun.
I'll
exclusively go by.
I actually taking it back to the first question. When I started, I wouldn't take the laptop home because it was a very big part that of the job that was impressed upon me was the work-life balance and make sure that you're happy in like your personal life. Since I didn't know anything about workers' compensation when I started, and I still believed it to be very dry because you're learning literally the law and the statutes and the cases, I would take those types of horn books home, and before I go to bed, I'd like read a few pages and it would knock me out, right? I'd just go to sleep because it would be boring enough because I didn't have any foundation. And then I was surprised at how quickly like I would just capture certain things because it became a routine.
Right. No, and that makes sense. And like again, like in my earlier months, I'm here 6 months now, I feel like I wasn't as comfortable like talking to my coworkers about topics because like it still wasn't like impressed upon me that like, oh, it's really okay that you don't know what you're talking about. But like this environment, very early on, I learned like I can just like go into anyone's office and be like, do you have 5 minutes to just explain this to me? Like, Christian, how many times do I do that to you? Like,
it's getting less.
It's getting less. But
It's like,
in the beginning,
sometimes I even think about that. It's like, oh, when someone's starting, like they're not coming for help, they're not asking questions, and other than the time like I can use to allocate somewhere else, it's very refreshing and uplifting to see the progress of someone because it's like we've all been there, right? And when you see it happening to another person, it just creates this like environment where you can all like share in the wins of other people.
Right.
I've had a lot of nicknames. There's just variations on my name, right? Our practice manager calls me Chrissy, which I hope no one else calls me. It's like, another partner calls me Cease, like, for like Cintron, which was really interesting because that was a sports nickname that my brother and I used to get in high school. Like, and I never said that to anyone, and this other person calls me that.
picked up.
Yeah. And then of course, a lot of people call me Chris here more as like a joke now because I've said that growing up, when I would have friends over who would call me Chris, my parents would be like, his name is Christian. Right? So Mom, I'm sticking up for you, okay? His name is Christian. Chris is short for Christopher.
I think I'm also a little guilty of calling you Chris in the office. So
I definitely call you.
It's
I
not-
started
it's not
to, but
easy,
more
so
as
I'm
like
sorry.
Right. Just apologize to my mom. I don't
really
mind. I don't mind. All right. We'll do one more.
Okay.
And I'll just flip through the book
let's
and
try
like
that.
almost like stop on a question.
Okay.
All right.
Let's try that out.
All right. Have you ever accidentally injured anyone? That's probably the closest question we have to workers' compensation. Have you ever accidentally injured anyone?
Accidentally injured someone. I can't think of any time where
You've just been good, upstanding
pretty good,
people,
yeah.
like, you know,
I don't think I've
aware
ever,
of your faculties, super coordinated.
well, I'm definitely
right?
not. No, I probably definitely accidentally injured myself, but
that's true, actually. Yeah.
no, but in a way now, like if and when I do see people get injured, I cannot help but like think about this job now. I like
Right.
think of like
Right.
the ins and outs, like and
Right.
even like I noticed like my shoulder was sore the other day, and I'm like starting to do
Like the abduction, and the
and
deflection.
I'm like, oh my god, like it's I think I guess to frame this question more in a workers' comp way, like I again, like anytime I see like an injury now, I'm like, what kind of doctor are they going to? You think it's gonna be an orthopedist? Like I notice myself thinking that way, and I think it's funny to think that way when you just see like any type of injury.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of had that same, I guess, realization after working here for now, a year and a half, I think. I remember, I think I was browsing on some social media, and I came across a video of an employee who was, exaggerating a pain from lifting what looked like a 15-pound box, and I'm starting to think, like, how does this work into 114A? What kind of things would we be putting in? Like, how would this surveillance help us, or this closed circuit footage help us? And like, now that we're kind of integrated into this field, those sort of hits just kind of.
Because that isn't an accident, right? That is a fabrication. That's an intentional misrepresentation of what that claimant is doing. Whereas, have you ever accidentally injured someone? Those injuries are most likely compensable, right?
Yeah.
Because they're inherent risk of doing the particular job,
Right.
Sure.
right? Like if you are working on a construction site and you're working with various materials that maybe are strewn about and you slip over them because of all the work that you're doing, that's a legitimate injury, right? I can't even think of a defense that we would use unless you're intoxicated, right? Or maybe you did this on purpose, right? And now I'm actually thinking of all the defenses, right? It's just I can't think of it.
Don't worry.
Oh, there he goes. There he goes. And it does make you think about what you do every day. I like to think of that as a good thing because you're subconsciously doing it from a happy place, right? I think there are a lot of people that go to work every day and, when 5 o'clock hits or whatever the time is, they couldn't be happier to just punch out, clock out, and start the weekend, start the night, right? And while we all do that here, this place is like a ghost town at 6 p.m. What's interesting is that the things that you see outside of work, if you're applying them to what you're doing in your work life, I feel like it's your subconscious telling yourself like, this is a good thing you're doing. Like this is working out because it's bleeding into your personal life in a good way, right?
Right. Like,
none of us are going to cocktail parties and like, guys, you'll never believe all these cases that I worked on every single day.
Exactly, and I feel like it also brings like a good it's like now that I have like this new knowledge, I have like different kind of conversation starters with people. Like I have a lot of friends in the medical field, and it's cool now to be able to like understand some of the stuff that they're doing because I read a lot of medical reports. Like I was recently on vacation and we were on this like food tour and there was an IME doctor on this food tour from New Jersey, and I was like, oh my god. And then we just like in another country sat and like talked about the job, and I was like, that's cool that I was able to like contribute to this conversation with somebody that I randomly met in another country, and I enjoyed talking about it.
Right. It's the feeling that you get when you're talking about it, because there will be a lot of people that do whatever that they do for a living, and they will shy away from talking about that, or they'll be angry about talking about that. And those are the things that I think people don't realize plays a role into their overall happiness. I mean, we're here for a good chunk of our waking hours.
Yeah, of course.
And to not like it would just be,
Sad.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
A little sad.
yeah. So I think that's a good point. Should we do one more?
Yeah, why not?
Let's do one more.
Do it.
Let's do one more.
Okay.
Right? I'm gonna run out of questions.
Yeah, I wonder how many of the 3,000 we've actually.
Ooh, have you ever faked your way through something? And if so, what?
I mean, could you associate that with like, not that the arguments are fake, but like in court when you're like, when a judge is just not buying or like going for your argument, but you're still there, you're still like vigorously defending your stance. Like, I feel like that kind of emotion to an argument could be like,
I don't even know if that's fake though, right?
it's not
Or
that
that's
it's fake, but it's like, I need
that's-
to
You're finding like an alternate way to
try
reach
and-
a solution. Maybe it wasn't your first way.
right.
I don't think obviously there's going to be a perfect analogy to the claimant who, engages in symptom magnification at the
Right.
doctor's office. But I do think that there's, the phrase like fake it till you make it, right, is like, has like a negative connotation or built around it. But what I think people do is lean on their humanity, their just person to person skills, their
Right.
communication skills, because even for someone like me who's been doing this for a long time, if I go to a court, and I hear an argument from the other side that like is completely out of left field, I still have to use those skills
Right.
too. But I think faking something is more indicative of what we see on the other side, right?
True.
Like, how do we know what the other side is saying is realistically true? And bringing in this defense mentality, right? If you defend from day one, what are the things you're trying to do? You're actually trying to prove the fact that they're not faking it, right? Because I say all the time, this system is really meant for claims that are compensable to be accepted and paid out, and for claims that are like fake, right, to use that word, to be denied and to be closed, right? You're just trying to find the truth of the matter. And if you think about it yourself, what percent of your cases are accepted claims or denied claims? A high probability is that the number is on the accepted side, right?
Yeah.
Would you say like you're
Right now, I think I only have like 2 or 3 denied, like straight out denials.
right? And so if you think about it, how much faking is there going on? You could even argue that there's more faking going on in the accepted claim because they think they've won
Right.
and they probably had a legitimate accident, but now they are just like opening the Band-Aid and letting the wound
Sort of stretch
Right.
open. They're almost opening the wound themselves.
I definitely have more of those than I do denied claims.
You guys think that that's the bigger problem you see every day?
Yeah, I mean, especially with some of these claims where you're not having any surgeries and you're noticing that the claimant's out of work for just an extended period of time that just doesn't add up. You're getting these total findings from doctors and something isn't really right. So this sort of fake it till you make it mentality seems to be kind of rampant, I guess, even in these accepted claims where we're not denying compensability, but these guys have been just kicking their feet up, enjoying themselves
Right.
at the cost of the employer. So
And I feel those are the types of arguments that are like not the hardest for me to make, but it's like it's sometimes so obvious that there's a little bit of magnification, but just no one's trying to buy it, and
Right.
like trying to like stress those points in court, and knowing you have like solid arguments for those points, and everyone just being like, no. It's kind of like, what? But it makes you want to like
You've
fight
had a
hard.
couple of those
Yeah.
where you believe that it's so open and shut, and the system just kind of turns you away because they just want to find for the claimant.
Yeah.
And I know that our clients are consistently frustrated about that. And really, I think the value that we bring in those circumstances is, the never give up attitude, like adherence to the law. And you know, I like to tell people, a judge is always going to do what a judge is going to do. Mm-hmm. So if that can be random, then why can't we focus on the concrete, the objective, like the application of law to fact? That's what we focus on.
Right.
Because that's the most fair thing to do.
Right, and it works into us all like finding creative solutions to solve those problems when you're consistently finding for a claimant and we think we have the most concrete arguments. Like, we're forced to go back to the drawing board and be like, put our heads together and think of a creative way to get around everything that's been done already. And I do think we do that well.
All right. Well, that was 4 questions. I think our listeners definitely know that we didn't prepare these questions.
No.
We took some real stretches to take the questions and try to make them about workers' compensation and the law as much as possible. So I hope that keeps building the trust for everybody who's listening, that there's no rehearsal. This podcast is meant to be, you are a fly on the wall on Third Friday where there's no hearings in the entire state, and you can listen to the best attorneys in the world talk shop about what they do for you every single day. You guys have any last thoughts?
I enjoyed my first Third Friday podcast.
Yeah, this was fun.
I'd like to be back sometime.
If anyone wants to grab a copy of this book, it's at your local Target.
Oh, that's right. Should we just give a free plug?
Literally
to the book.
Best $8.
It can't only be a Target, but
it must
right?
be Amazon,
it's gotta be
probably.
Everything, right? Like, we don't have any skill in plugging things. Go to
No.
Target, right? I love Target. 3,000 questions about me. Actually, very funny story. I plugged it to one of my friends. Because I think like there must have been a great round of questions that we did one day, and then I was having dinner at his house, and he had just started a new job, and I was like, you know, what would be a great icebreaker book? He bought it from Amazon on the spot.
Okay,
right.
Nice.
There you go.
So 3,000 questions about me. It's a red book with 3,000 questions.
Literally sticks right
and
out.
I think it'll just bring your people closer together. It's just a great way to share things with your group. So for Alexa Cintron and Tomer Lehr, my name is Christian Cison, reminding you to defend from day one.